Hello. Good to see you. It's been a couple of weeks. I hope you're doing well. We just entered this week into Passion Tide, which is the period from the fifth Sunday of Lent through to Easter, and then it, of course, on Easter Sunday it becomes Easter Tide. So we're still enjoying our Lent. Hopefully yours is going well, and of course the whole point is it's a time where we try and imitate Christ as he was 40 days in the desert fasting. That we do the same. So I hope that's going well for you. Actually, that's funny. On the note of Jesus in the desert, and of course that's when he is tempted by the devil, which of course just harkens back to the beginning of Genesis with the serpent. I have thought over the last, I've thought this for a while, but I've thought more about it over the last 2 weeks or something like that, that most people don't understand dragons at all. So in most modern fiction, I'm actually trying to think of different examples. The obvious one is like Game of Thrones. I've never read any of them or watched any of the TV series, and I don't anticipate ever doing so. But there's just, a lot of fiction nowadays that involves dragons. And interestingly, no one understands dragons. And except for if you are familiar with old literature, particularly scripture. And then I think Tolkien understood dragons uniquely. And of course, he has dragons all throughout his lore of Middle-earth. And I was thinking about this because my son and I were watching it's 1977 or something like that, The Hobbit. And in it, you don't quite get it with Smaug, but you understand a little bit of what Tolkien is getting at, why dragons are so dangerous. So for most people, dragons are dangerous because they're big animals. They have, like a lion, they have claws, but they're just bigger. And they have jaws, and I'm thinking of Smaug's description of himself. Claws are spears, and his teeth are swords, and his wings are a hurricane. He's just a big, or most people conceive of dragons as just being big, dangerous reptiles. And in some way they are, but that isn't the most sinister or even dangerous thing about dragons. And in fact, it's because they are so cunning. Which of course is a really old idea, that serpents are cunning, and that they're dangerous not just because they could physically harm you, but because they have this intellect, almost this ability to reason and subvert the human reason, actually. And I am constantly reminded of particularly Smaug, but also in the Silmarillion, you have in the tales around Turambar, you have his ordeal with Glaurung. And I thought I might just read some of that to you. There's some really awesome illustrations. I'm sure you've seen these before. These aren't new illustrations or anything like that, but these by Ted Naismith. You see Glaurung there. Ted Naismith is, in my opinion, no Alan Lee, but he's very good, and I enjoy his illustrations. I would love to have Alan Lee's illustrations. I believe he's done some illustrations for the history of Middle-earth or something like that. My brother has them. I can't remember what they're called. Anyway, but I thought I would just read some of this to you, and we can kind of see how Tolkien conceives of dragons and really where a large part of their malice and their power comes from. So I'll just pick this up here. Oh boy, where were we? And now he, Turin, stood alone, for the few that followed him had fled. But in that moment Glaurung issued from the gaping doors and lay behind, between Turin and the bridge. Then suddenly he spoke, by the evil spirit that was in him, saying, "Hail, son of Hurin, well met." Then Turin sprang about, and strode against him, and the edges of Gurthang shone as with flame. But Glaurung withheld his blast, and opened wide his serpent eyes, and gazed upon Turin. Without fear, Turin looked into them as he raised up the sword, and straightway he fell under the binding spell of the lidless eyes of the dragon, and was halted moveless. Then for a long time he stood as one graven of stone, and they two were alone, silent, before the doors of Nargothrond. But Glaurung spoke again, taunting Turin, and he said, "Evil have been all thy ways, son of Hurin, thankless fosterling, outlaw, slayer of thy friend, thief of love, usurper of Nargothrond, captain foolhardy, and deserter of thy kin. As thralls thy mother and thy sister live in Dorlomen, in misery and want. Thou art arrayed as a prince, but they go in rags. And for thee they yearn, but thou carest not for that. Glad may be thy father be to learn that he hath such a son, as learn he shall." And Turin, being under the spell of Glaurung, hearkened to his words, and he saw himself as in a mirror misshapen by malice, and loathed that which he saw. And while he was yet held by the eyes of the dragon in torment of mind, and could not stir, the orcs drove away the herded captives, and they passed nigh to Turin, and crossed over the bridge. Among them was Finduilas, and she cried out to Turin as she went, but not until her cries and the wailing of the captives was lost upon the northward road did Glaurung release Turin, and he might not stop his ears against that voice that haunted him after. And here's where Glaurung gets very tricky. Then suddenly Glaurung withdrew his glance and waited, and Turin stirred slowly as one waking from a hideous dream. Then coming to himself, he sprang upon the dragon with a cry. But Glaurung laughed, saying, "If thou wilt be slain, I will slay thee gladly. But small help will that be to Morwen and Nienor. No heed didst thou give to the cries of the elf-woman. Wilt thou deny also the bond of thy blood?" But Turin, drawing back his sword, stabbed at the dragon's eyes, and Glaurung, coiling back swiftly, towered above him and said, "Nay, at least thou art valiant, beyond all whom I have met, and they lie who say that we of our part do not honor the valor of foes. See now, I offer thee freedom. Go to thy kin if thou canst. Get thee gone, and if elf or man be left to make tale of these days, then surely in scorn they will name thee, if thou spurnest this gift." Then Turin, being yet bemused by the eyes of the dragon, as were he treating with a foe that could know pity, believed the words of Glaurung, and turning away he sped over the bridge. But as he went, Glaurung spoke behind him, saying in a fell voice, "Haste thee now, son of Hurin, to Dorlomen, or perhaps the orcs shall come before thee once again. And if thou tarry for Finduilas, then never shalt thou see Morwen again, and never at all shalt thou see Nienor thy sister, and they will curse thee." But Turin passed away on the northward road, and Glaurung laughed once more, for he had accomplished the errand of his master. It's really quite sinister. It's a little reminiscent of the song battle that Finrod and Sauron have. They're singing back and forth, and Finrod is kind of getting the best of Sauron in this battle that they're having, until Sauron reminds Finrod of the kinslaying. And that's what, serpents do, is they just put some doubt in your mind, and that's what Glaurung does there. And Smaug is another excellent example. Again, the dangerous thing about Smaug as a dragon is, of course, he's a big, ferocious reptile, but he is also so cunning. And you see this in his conversation with Bilbo. Bilbo prides himself on being pretty witty. Like in the beginning, when he's talking to Gandalf, the narrator, who is supposed to be Bilbo himself, says that Bilbo isn't quite as prosy as he would like. He's not quite as well-spoken as he would like, or he thinks. But in his conversation with Smaug, he gives himself all these titles to kind of, give Smaug something up, answer Smaug's question about who he is, but not reveal anything really. So he calls himself the Lucky Number, the Barrel Rider, all those sorts of things. But Smaug is so cunning that he figures out, like he sees through a lot of these masks that Bilbo's putting up, the lucky number. Oh, well, the unlucky number is 13. So to be the lucky number, you must be 14. So you have 13 friends with you, and you're a barrel rider, so you were helped and from Lake Town. And of course, all of this is to the horror, Smaug realizing this is to the utter horror of Bilbo. So I think that's where, one, it's far more interesting, but I think that's where the real sinister power of dragons and serpents and worms really lies, and not that they're these big, ferocious animals, cool looking though they may be, but they're really these creatures that, particularly today, they're very reminiscent of the beginning of Genesis in the Garden of Eden. That initial question, will you really die? So I think that's interesting, and I think most people who don't read Tolkien, I think if you read Tolkien, you probably, at least subconsciously, that kind of hits you. But I think most people, especially people who go from TV show to TV show, when they watch, movies or consume media, anytime there's a dragon involved, they're always dumb, big, strong, brutish beasts who can breathe fire and fly most of the time. And that is primarily not their danger. So I've been thinking about that. I thought you might be interested in hearing that as well. And if you didn't, at least you got to sit here and listen to me pontificate about it. Anyway, all that to say, it was good to see you again. I hope to see you soon. Hope to see you more regularly. Have a good night.